You've seen plans go left and right. How do you push through?
It's hard. It's certainly hard. I think we all experience it. I don't think any of us are immune from feeling overwhelmed. I think that how we handle it in those moments, it helps us get through it. I try very hard to take a breath and know that this moment isn't long term. Knowing that if you stall, delay, ignore, it's not going to solve the problem. So, really, the only way to relieve that stress, anxiety, overwhelmed feeling is to just get through it. And so, I think breaking it down and going, okay, what's the first step? Okay, what's the second step? What's the third step? And just do one thing at a time.
Welcome to the UMGC podcast, Unstoppable Stories, with your host, Nathan James.
Hello, everybody. How we doing today? It's Nathan, with here actually today with Abigail Compton. So happy to have her on today. She is actually a dairy farm business owner, UMGC graduate, and the recipient actually of a UMGC scholarship called the Pillars of Strength scholarship, which is specifically for caregivers of disabled veterans. And so, Abigail, honor and a privilege to be here with you, and thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How are you?
Really good, really good. That's exciting to talk to you. And let's jump right in. So, Abigail, look, a typical morning for you on the farm, essentially. What's that look like for you?
Well, this morning I was up about 6 and started getting bottles ready for all of our baby goats we have. I have about 14 baby goats that are bottle fed every day. So getting bottles prepared. And then we just recently got a bull calf who is a week old and today. And so he's also being bottle fed. And then I go into milking our 7 goats and then feeding everybody. So, that's how my day starts. And then we have 4 kids, so they jump in and help too.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Look at that. That's a family project, yeah?
It is. It is.
So, look, you said 15 years ago that you never really necessarily saw yourself here. So what did you expect to for life to look like back then?
Honestly, I don't even know anymore because it's so crazy where we are now. I honestly didn't 15 years ago. My husband was he was actually medically retired in 2014. So, him getting out, I'm not really sure. Like everything was up in the air when he got out. And the focus wasn't 15 years ahead. It was the there and then, right? In that moment in the transition period. But I would have never seen myself owning livestock, running a goat dairy farm, any of those things. But I'm sure glad I am where I landed.
You've done so many things, right? I mean, I know just from previous conversations with you. I mean, we're talking CNA, certified nursing aide. I think that was an initial sort of professional dream that you had. And then here you are, running a farm. Um, so, I mean, what shift or what transition professionally do you think might have surprised you the most if you were looking back on this from, all that time ago?
Sure. So I did have a passion for, and I still do, for caring for others. I think mine has now changed to nourishing their bodies through food and agriculture. I thoroughly enjoyed being a nursing assistant, and I was going to school for nursing. I am certainly glad for the opportunity to be a nursing assistant and for the experience I had and the patients I cared for. But what I witnessed during that time was that be going forward in nursing was not a career that was for me. And for no other reason that I didn't want to be stuck between the families, the doctors. I really enjoyed the direct care as a nursing assistant, but I was able to provide for the patients. And so nursing was not where I wanted to go with my career. It took me a long time to figure out what I really wanted to do. I'm almost 40 years old, and I just feel now like I am finding my footing professionally. And I think that the major shift was after my husband got out. um, we landed in a beautiful area of Virginia, and there's a lot of agriculture, growing here. And we found it very enriching to provide our children with the knowledge of how to raise their food, how to butcher their food, how to feed their family, how to care for their livestock. And so it's not something I ever saw, but, but getting here was a very long road, but one that, like, I wouldn't trade at all. And there was a lot of other, like, short-term jobs in there. I worked at PetSmart. I actually sold airtime for a radio station. I mean, I was a waitress. I did a lot of different things between, when I graduated high school and now. And so, over 20 years, I feel like everything that has happened has prepared me for where we are now.
When it comes to farming, could you go a little bit even deeper into maybe what caught your heart about it? What made you fall in love with farming in particular? Because I think a lot of our listeners are trying to imagine. I mean, I'm trying to imagine what that might look like, right? It's not something that would pop up to me. It's like, oh, this is my dream. As amazing as it looks like, something caught you about it. And I'm just curious what if you could talk more about that.
I've always loved animals. And so, having a beautiful piece of property where we can fill it with animals, although my husband, I don't think expected me to have so many. I often joke with him and say, I mean, you can't put me here and expect anything else from me. But I think like the biggest thing that, was the catalyst to moving even more into growing our farm and my business was being able to serve others through nourishment of their bodies.
I can't help but wonder how attached you or the kids get to any of these of the animals, right? Like, because okay, I can relate to having pets, right? A pet cat, pet rabbits, and they get names, right? And so here you are, like you said, it's a family project raising these animals, and then their little lives come to an end at some point. Does there an attachment there, or how do you get past like, okay, we love them, but at the same time, they're going to the chopping block eventually.
I think for me, knowing that their life was fulfilled, they came to our farm, you know, the end goal was meat. So knowing that from the beginning helps. I'm grateful my children are really understanding, flexible, and caring, and so they also know that. Thankfully, we haven't had any tears shed over anybody going to the butcher or butchering ourselves.
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the biggest thing is knowing that they are here for a short period of time. And it's okay to be attached. They do have names. I have a steer out in our pasture. His name is Gunslinger. He is named, my son named him after a burger, because he will become our food. But in the meantime, he gets scratches, he gets pets. We lay in the pasture with him. He runs to us and his head swings around. And the joy that I see that we are able to provide him during his time here, makes the end okay. I
Ah,
know for sure
yeah.
that our animals' lives are far better at our farm than any meat that I could buy at the grocery store. And so that in itself is, like a comfort.
Let's talk a little bit about your husband's journey. Can you share your husband's journey, his story, and what being, his caregiver has been like as well?
So my husband joined the Marine Corps. Um, just after high school. And he was attached to 3-8, which was an infantry unit. He deployed to Haiti. And then he did two deployments with 3-8 to Iraq. He was in Ramadi and Fallujah. Um, And then he re-enlisted to go to MARSOC, which is Marine Special Operations Command, which is the special forces of the Marine Corps. Um, and there he did 2 tours, with MARSOC to Afghanistan. His first deployment in 2009, it was the end of December 2009, he was shot in the head during deployment. And back then, not a whole lot was known about TBIs. Um, Obviously there's been a lot of research not just in the military but professional athletes, and so I think that the knowledge now in how TBIs, not just short term but long term, can affect you is increasing with through research. But back then not a whole lot was known. It penetrated from the back. He was turning in that moment to get another round or mortar. Honestly, I don't know, but he was turning, and thankfully he was, because when the bullet left the enemy, it was headed straight to the center of his head in the front. He turned and was able to that bullet rode his head and his helmet and then lodged in the front
No
right.
way.
Yeah, his helmet is actually, we loaned it to the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, and it is on display in the MARSOC exhibit on loan from us. So that bullet is still in his helmet, it's lodged in his helmet. They did not send him home after that injury. It took quite a bit of time to get him off the mountain. They field stitched him up, and then they took him back to base where he recovered. And then he went back out and finished the deployment. He did not make it to Germany. They did not do intervention of TBI care. They had him working just a few days after he was injured back on computers. And then they
Seriously.
redeployed him after that
Wow.
back to Afghanistan, to the same location that he was injured the first time. And then, since he actually was medically retired, not even based on his TBI, he has torn his ACLs 3 times. So he's torn one leg twice and the other leg once. And then he's also had shoulder surgery. So it was actually based on post deployment workup. When he came home, they check out the guys mentally and physically. And during one of those physical exams, he was unable to land on his feet in the same pressure, and they caught him for having a torn ACL. And that's actually what started the catalyst of having him medically retired. But through that, they realized that his TBI was significant. And we spent a month at NICO, which is at Bethesda. It is a traumatic brain injury, intensive clinic. And so they did a lot of tests, they did therapy, and it was really interesting to see his brain scans from NICO. They are more high tech, and so they could take individual slices, and you could really see all the dead tissue essentially in his frontal lobe. It was like shotgun blast. It's just a bunch of white dead tissue, and so that translates to short term memory loss. He'll walk into a room and kind of like he knew what he was going for, and now he can't remember. There's just some balance issues, and there's a lot of things that come along with having a TBI. And at this point it's been it, TBIs can heal given rest and time, but when you are put back to work almost immediately and then put back out into the field to finish your deployment, rest isn't really given. So he didn't get his brain to heal the way it probably could have, given a little more time and rest. But I honestly believe that we're not given more than we can handle. And this is our new normal. We don't dwell on what our life could have, should have, would have been, because it's not going to be that. And that would just create a lot of resentment, frustration, and would hold us back from achieving, anything further. So we don't dwell on it. This is our new normal, and that's okay. My children don't know him any differently. And they will say dad has, when they were little, they would say dad has a bad memory. So memory, and he can't remember. And so that's what we just joked, be like, you have a bad memory. So, um, but I honestly feel that that life and those challenges has made me a better person, a better caregiver to my husband, to my children. It's made me just a better human. It's given me more grit. Like, I would have never seen myself 20, 30 years ago with the determination and grit that I have now. And so, although like those things that happened, are difficult, I'm also grateful for those challenges because it has shaped us in a way that I didn't know that individually or as a whole family you know, we would be. And so I'm grateful.
Yeah. Wow. As a well, first I want to just say, to your husband whenever you get a chance to listen to this, that how much I appreciate you, how much we appreciate you, um, and your story. Thank you so much, Abigail. I wanted to ask you when it comes to being a military connected caregiver, and being in that community of caregivers, what would be a message or something you'd like to say, to our listeners, and just that you would like everyone to know when it comes to uh, uh, what it means to be a caregiver and maybe how folks can support, right? Because I know that oftentimes our society doesn't really, it can kind of overlook the fact that of everything the heroes that our caregivers truly are. So I'm just wanting to give you the mic to share what's on your heart as relates to what it means to be a caregiver, and what you'd like folks to know.
I honestly believe it's a privilege to be a caregiver. My husband served our country and now I am caring for him. So it's a privilege and an honor to be able to take care of him. And um there's several organizations that do support caregivers. Locally, I am part of one called the Yellow Ribbon Fund, and they do amazing workshops specifically for caregivers of veterans. They do workshops that'll treat you like for the get togethers, like coffee and lunch and pottery classes and salt caves and hot yoga and float spa. Like, they do so much for the caregivers in the DMV area. And so I really appreciate that, patrons donate to the Yellow Ribbon Fund so that there's moments of like respite for us as caregivers where we can go connect with other caregivers. And there's a bond there. It's an unspoken bond. And it's not about what kind of injury our husband has. It's about connecting on a level where we all are part of this club that we didn't ask to be in, but that, we enjoy being in because we have camaraderie through that connection. And so I'm grateful for, the people who support the Yellow Ribbon Fund, to make it possible for us to connect with each other.
That's wonderful. Wow. Well, at one point, your story intersected with UMGC, um, and ultimately you ended up graduating. It was wonderful. I got to be a part of your story in that way too, which was really great to be front row for that. Tell us a little bit about uh, how you got connected with UMGC, and we'll go from there.
It was actually another caregiver. We were at an event by the Yellow Ribbon Fund, and so
Wow.
she had been through the Pillars of Strength. She had been, given a scholarship through Pillars of Strength, and
Hmm.
she was talking about it at this retreat, and it started me thinking, like, hey, like maybe you should apply. I hadn't finished school. I still didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so I was like, at this point in my life, I deserve, not for my husband, not for my children, but for myself, to finish school. I had spent so much time I'd been in and out of school several times. So I had been to community college where we were stationed. I had taken classes with other online colleges, and life happens. And I have 4 children. So, you get busy. I had children. My husband needed care. We were transitioning out, whatever it was. And I never was able to complete college. And so I was like, well, I deserve this. And let me apply. So I started working on my application, and honestly, I never expected to be a recipient in a million years. There's so many deserving caregivers. And so but I had to try. So when I got the call and was awarded the Pillars of Strength scholarship, I was just overjoyed with like gratitude to be able to complete my education. And so that's how we ended up colliding here. And it was the best experience I had. I enjoyed being able to work at my own pace. I could take less classes over the
Yeah.
summer, or like last summer, I really packed on my classes because I was determined to graduate in December. And I knew I knew it was going to be challenging. But I did
Yeah,
it.
I think you did 5
And
classes in the
yes, I
summer.
did. Yeah, yeah. That was like, I kept thinking to myself, you can
Ugh.
withdraw before the withdrawal date. But then also, I was like, no, you can do this. You can finish. You have a goal. Like everything else I've been through in life, like you can do this. And so I buckled down and found my grit and got through it. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity and experiences I had being a student with, through UMGC.
In the process, as you're working through, semesters where, for example, you had 5 classes in a row, at a time, and your mom and a caregiver, what's the magic? What's the secret sauce, right? Like, obviously, you had the determination, but especially, I'm sure when times got particularly challenging, how were you managing all of this at the same time and juggling it?
I honestly don't know. I look back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even know
Yeah,
how I did all that." But I think that having a supportive family, my husband was so, so, so supportive. And my kids
okay, that's
were,
huge.
yeah, it's huge when you have support. My friends understood that, like, if I couldn't go do something with them, like, they were supportive. They were just as determined for me to finish that, as I was. So having a support network
That's
around you,
special.
it is. And I think it was also really special. My children, so my oldest, he'll be 14 in July. And I think and then my son underneath him, he just turned 12. So they're the oldest too. And so for them, they knew I was finishing school. So they had patience when I had to go, write a paper instead of being outside playing with them. They really stepped up and did a lot of the farm chores over those 2 years, because the deal was when I finished school, I would take over all the farm chores, the morning and evening chores. But my boys really stepped up so that I could spend that time, you know, submitting assignments or whatever it was, in the morning and in the evening. So having the support, and I also think it's really important my kids saw me finish school. I think it proves to them you don't have to go right away, but that it's it is something you can accomplish later in life. And that education
So true.
is accessible at any age. And so it was really important that they saw that. And I'm grateful for them and their support. So I think the biggest thing is having a good support network.
Yeah. Wow. Uh, they say it takes a village, right?
It does. It does.
Wow. So, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you graduated. What did it mean to graduate? And especially, like, I think from my understanding, there may have been some folks that weren't quite sure if you were going to graduate or what your path was going to look like. Right? If I'm hitting that
Yeah.
target, but what did it mean to you to graduate even with that?
It meant a lot. It was like a culmination of 20 years of feeling like I was never going to achieve it. And so every time I would start school, I would kind of get a little flack every now and then, like, oh, you're starting again. Are you going to ever finish? And so it
Gotcha.
was, it was really nice to like put a little nice bow on it and say, I'm done. I did it. I did it for myself. I didn't do it because I was expected to right out of high school or, go into a career that in the end I didn't like or love. And so having finishing at my age, after 20 years, it was a little sweeter than I think it would have been if I had finished right out of high school. Because I
Sure.
worked so hard to get to where I am. And so, like it was like the cherry on the sundae to graduate.
I love how your educational journey reflected your life journey so much, right? It took 20 years. It can be easy for folks to think education fits in the box, right? The 4-year box, right? And now you're trying to cram your life into that. And that works for some folks. But at the end of the day, it is completely okay and even recommended for your education to fit into your overall life's journey because some things take priority, right? Where you're gonna have to move things back a little bit. But the fact that you're taking this time, especially your passion for caring for others, has been like that's one thing that stands out to me, has just stood out throughout all of those 20 years, right? Um, CNA, taking care of your husband, taking care of your family, taking care of the farm. And through all of that, you're still weaving in education and finishing what you began ultimately. That's pretty unstoppable stuff. So shout out to you and to your husband and your kids and your friends who they sound like an amazing cheerleader section. I'm not going to lie
They
about that,
are. I'm really blessed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So looking forward now, uh, you've got the farm. My understanding is that from conversations with you, it's not necessarily your goal to grow the farm to be this super big entity, right? But more so to focus, I think, on sustainability. Could you talk about that?
It's hard to start from scratch. A lot of large farms are generations built. And so we don't have that behind us. But what we do have is passion. And so I'm looking at growing slow because what I don't want to do is take out loans to fund our farm. So the goal is for it to be self-sustainable, so for our animals, to whether it be through butchering or milk herd shares, to essentially pay for themselves, their food and their vet costs. um and as we slowly grow, then we can expand, but it's important for us to not tax our family further, and to first be a resource for our family and then for others. So slow growth is important. We ended up I had to sell a bunch of my chickens, well, all my chickens. We had foxes coming up. And so and then they drew coyotes out
Oh
too.
wow.
And so
No
instead
way.
of, yeah, and so we were having a little pack of coyotes coming up to our barn. And I can't have that with baby goats, coming up soon. So instead of trying to force something, we ended up selling all of our poultry, and that way they had better lives. They weren't always in fear. And so, sometimes you have to pivot, and that's okay too. So, being understanding, not being hard and fast and like, sticking to the game plan, but being able to like see what isn't working and pivot and do that for the betterment of your livestock, but also for sustainability. Because the option there was have my livestock eaten and I wouldn't get eggs, or sell my livestock. They still are producing for somebody else. And I just go buy eggs from another friend who's a farmer. And so being able to be flexible, figuring out what works best within your parameters is what's important, for us. And actually, honestly, I probably have learned more in the 2.5 years about being like, a little flexible, from UMGC, having to pivot, having to change my plans, having to jump onto this assignment, and taking business classes and having to learn to be flexible has really, led me to where I am. And I'm just grateful for all those lessons that have taught me to, you know, bend a little bit because I'm pretty rigid. It's taken me a long time to be flexible. And so, um, those lessons over the last couple years have really helped.
Yeah. Ah, you know, that just sparked a question for me. What is it like to feel overwhelmed? Because I know I imagine you've had moments, and to push through that, right? Just those moments where like those rock bottom moments, because you watched your husband go through each of those episodes, right? You've seen plans go left and right, just like you just described. How do you push through? What does that look like? Have you had that? What's that been like? To be overwhelmed and have to push through that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's certainly hard. I think we all experience it. I don't think any of us are immune from feeling overwhelmed. I think that how we handle it in those moments, it helps us get through it. I try very hard to take a breath and know that this moment isn't long term. I think that is helpful, knowing that if you stall, delay, ignore, it's not going to solve the problem. So really the only way to relieve that stress, anxiety, overwhelmed feeling is to just get through it, figure out and break it down. So a lot of times those are you're overwhelmed because it feels like a lot of things either going on or that you have to do at one time. And so I think breaking it down and going, okay, what's the first thing? What's the first step? Okay, what's the second step? What's the third step? And just, do one thing at a time. One thing at a time helps, get through that moment. And that's how I have tried to navigate, those moments.
That's so good. That's so good. You sound like a coach, a life coach. I'm just like, "Yes, ma'am. Okay, I got it." Okay, and, you know, these steps that you've taken as you've pushed through those tough times, I just wanna emphasize this from knowing you, that this isn't someone who is doing this just to survive. Abigail is a thriver and is always looking to also help others who may be caught in similar situations or other situations. How can we turn this into something that helps the next person, which I've found just remarkable, honestly, about you, Abigail. And even with the farm, I know the farm isn't just to simply turn profits. You've had meaningful connections, right? You've had meaningful connections and made meaningful partnerships, with others as well, with the produce. So I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that, maybe particularly in helping folks in the military community, I think, but go for it.
Yeah, I am extremely grateful as we got into livestock and farming. I started with a couple chickens and two goats, and it quickly grew. We have about 30 goats on our farm right now, and honestly, that is a huge passion for me. But through that, I have been blessed to meet some really awesome mentors, one of which is a dear friend, Erica Gord. She owns Hawk Newberry and actually is where I bought my first two goats from. And she's been an amazing mentor. And the the thing is she gives selflessly and has helped me through situations that I'm learning. And I strive to do the same thing for other people who are new, because I don't think gatekeeping information is helpful to anybody. And because so many people have been so helpful with information, it's important to do the same thing moving forward. After this podcast, I'm actually going to another farm to meet a vet for a friend. He has got to go do something and he's got a cow down with milk fever. And so I got the call this morning. And so from here, I'm going to run over there. It's super important to be connected within your community, be helpful, be connected, be supportive to each other. And so part of, my community isn't just, people in agriculture, it's military families. And I reached out to Yellow Ribbon Fund and offered to do a butchering workshop, which we'll actually have this weekend. And so some caregiver wives, and their spouses have signed up to come and do a butchering workshop. So they'll get to start to finish butcher their own bird that they'll take home. And it's so important for me to give back. This isn't the first time I've been connected with a nonprofit. When my husband was with MARSOC, I helped co-found a grassroots organization called Raising Raiders, and it was for military spouses who set up an organization. We saw a need, and we started by doing a fun run, and then we were like, "Oh wait, we could be a nonprofit and do better." And we supported caregivers. We've supported military families. And it wasn't just for people out of the military, but it was for our active families. Our husbands are often gone training. And it was things like, we helped fund soccer camp. We helped pay for school for a spouse. We provided nourishment in the form of like protein drinks and things like that for our service members. There's so much more, but we did a lot of benevolence work as well. And so I just really, really enjoy seeing other people survive and thrive. And so if I can be a small part of that journey for them, helping them, that's all I really want to see is us, helping each other, because none of us are going to be able to move forward without a little extra help. I think we all end up thriving in those situations when we all give a little bit. And so it's just I really have a passion for giving back. And ultimately I would love to see our farm sustainable so I can do a little more of the giving back through the farm side as well.
Okay, so what's the name of your farm?
Compton Family Farm is our overall farm. And then, which is my husband owns Compton Family Farm, but I own Compton Family Farm Dairy. And so the one that is under my name, we do have the dairy goats. I have a dairy cow. She's still young, so she's not in milk yet. And then we do like added value. So I make homemade body butters. I make jams and jellies. I make homemade pasta. All the things I like to eat, I love to share with everybody else. So,
Love it.
yeah.
Is there any way our listeners would be able to follow your journey or to support, your farm?
Sure. So I'm working on a website. I've only been out of school for a couple months and I'm catching up on all the
Yeah.
things that didn't get done. But I do have a face I do have a Facebook page that I try to update often. And I do have an Instagram also. So you can find us on Facebook under Compton Family Farm.
Compton Family Farm, everybody.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just giving folks time to write it down. We're going to wrap up here, but I got to give a shout out to, I believe, the cow that I heard in the background. I'm sure everyone heard it too. That's awesome, folks. This is very real. We're talking to Abigail on the farm, and the cow wanted a piece of the interview too. So I just wanted to give them a shout out too. What was it was a baby cow, I understand, a calf.
He is.
What's their
He's a
name?
week old. He's a week old today, and his name is
Just
Ron
a
Swanson.
week.
Yes, he's named after a burger. So, that way we remember the ultimate goal of these animals.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's something else. Well, shout out, welcome to the world after a week. And Abigail, thank you again. Seriously, I can't thank you enough for taking your time. And I know you're going to be off to the next thing, so we'll let you go. But appreciate you, and I also want to say to our listeners and our viewers, thank you for taking time to watch and to listen. And if you want to hear more unstoppable stories, just remember, if you haven't done this yet, to like and subscribe. Okay. And we'll be back with more. Okay. So for now, everyone, take care of yourself. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.